You ready to let the dogs out?
What?
Do what? Let the dogs out. Like, who let the dogs out? Who?
Off the Hook, airing on offthehooksports.com. Your home for real news, real opinions, and what really matters about Tennessee athletics. Always available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, iHeart. Like, share, follow, subscribe. Always available wherever you find your favorite podcasts.
This show will not be about me. I promise you that. I am not going to gloat about the Cowboys finally winning a road playoff game for the first time since I think 1902. And I'm not going to talk about the fact that Tom Brady has finally lost to the Cowboys. Maybe I'll mention that just a little bit as it ties into some Tennessee things, but we've got a lot to get to on the program. Jeremy Pruitt, after spending some time at the poker table, is sniffing around trying to get another college football job, which I thought and was told was impossible because the extent of the violations that occurred while he was the head coach at Tennessee. I thought he was an NFL lifer, not necessarily by his choice. Also makes a good bit of coin playing poker, which I guess it's because he has absolutely no personality, nor poker face, nor elated face, nor anything else. Good morning, Caleb Calhoun. How are you?
I'm doing great today. How are you, Dave?
I'm well. I stayed up and watched that Cowboys game, so I'm kind of an old man. I'm struggling to get by this morning, but that was entertaining. And the playoffs, I don't know that it's fair that you have a Monday night team, but I'm not going to get into that. That has to play this weekend on a shorter amount of rest. I think that's pretty goofy. But anyway, what did you think before we dive into this whole what is the biggest Tennessee vengeance victory discussion that I wanted to have with you as far as your thoughts on having a Monday night game? It would be the equivalent of having a team in the college football playoff that had one less day to prepare. I thought that was kind of goofy, to be real honest with you, but that's the way they set it up.
Yeah, see, for me, I was against, in general, just the playoff expansion. I thought 12 teams was the perfect setting for the playoff. I thought the NFL had by far the most perfect format of any league. And, they've expanded it to 14 2 years ago. And I think anybody who's watched the NFL the last 2 years realizes that last team to get in the playoffs in each conference the last couple of years didn't deserve to get in, had no business getting in. And you're right. Moving it to a Monday night, they are. The short week in a playoff is completely unfair. And it's similar, I would say, with the college football playoff. The reason it would be okay with the college football playoff is there's usually like a 9 or 10 day layoff between the bowl game and the national title game. But 6 days 6 versus 7 is a huge difference. So yeah, I think the NFL is being short-sighted. They're only thinking about how to maximize revenue now, but they are not thinking long term over how to keep a loyal following, and that could be their undoing.
Agreed. John asked, catching up, first time I have a chance to watch the show this year. New time. Yeah, it is a new time. So we're going to be at 10 o'clock each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. Travis asked, the NFL loves money, sure beats a bye week. Absolutely true. And yeah, I go back to the Damar Hamlin stuff and how much of that was used by money and how many of those decisions were made by money. And Caleb, the bottom line is if Tom Brady had gotten hurt in the 8th week of the season and wasn't a factor anymore, the NFL doesn't make any less money. The NFL, as much as any sports organization, realizes that all the dudes, I don't care if they're Tom Brady or they're Brian Maher, who could not, or was it, I don't know if it's Brian or not, but Maher, the kicker who couldn't hit an extra point. When those guys come and go, they just keep churning out the cash. One guy does not matter. And you saw a little bit of that with Damar Hamlin. I'm glad in the end they ended up handling it right. But that's just the way the NFL is going to be. The NFL does love money. That's what it is all about. And I will say this, too. I had this discussion with my wife and my mom yesterday. So you had the Concussion movie with Will Smith come out. And There's a difference between college football and the NFL. I've covered both on the sidelines, I've covered both in person. The guys are bigger, stronger, faster. In the NFL, there's not even really a comparison between the two. It's almost like two different sports. So with the DeMar Hamlin situation happening and concussion still an issue, the NFL may need to make its money while it can, because are they the same sport? Are they still the lead dog? And Caleb, probably talking about in your lifetime, not mine, but I could see 30 years where the NBA, who is built on stars, I could see them being the preeminent professional league. But, we'll see. The NFL's got a pretty firm grasp on it right now.
Yeah, the NBA is built on stars, which is good, and it's good from a global perspective. The NBA's problem is they were so star oriented, they can't really generate traction in local markets. For lack of a better term, the local NBA team does not draw interest, even on the level that the local baseball team draws interest on, and so that's where you want to have star caliber, but you also want all of your teams to have an avid following from their local base. And the problem with the NBA, and there's no way to fix this, we talk about element of randomness in sports. If before the NBA season starts that there's about only 4 teams that have a chance to win the finals. A lot of times there's only 2. And so, if another one of these teams is in your market and is not one of that team, you don't really care to watch that much. And, by the way, college football is dangerously going down that path. This year, everybody knew that it was going to be Georgia, Ohio State, or Alabama to win the title.
Yep.
There was nobody else that had a chance to win it. We knew that from the start. And college football is headed down a dangerous road if they don't find a way to bring a little more parity or introduce a little more randomness into the sport.
Well, let me ask you this. Did Tennessee and TCU change that narrative enough? Now, Tennessee did not make the college football playoff. TCU eventually got blown out by Georgia. But is that – I really thought, to your point, that a very, very predictable sport – and please click that thumbs up button. We greatly appreciate it so we can bring in more people. I really thought there was enough randomness, enough of a change up with TCU and Tennessee, and to some extent Southern Cal, because they would have done the same thing had Lincoln Riley not left. I thought there was enough of the unknown this year that it offset that issue, which is it's going to be these 3 or these 2 teams every year. I was, if I'm an organizer of the college football playoff in the postseason, I'm happy with what happened because other teams were a factor that you didn't expect in the beginning of the year.
I disagree, honestly. I don't think there was enough randomness. And I say that because it still ended up, the national championship game was that Georgia-Ohio State game in the semifinal. And I think that, here's what I would say. I think a 12-team playoff is going to make it better because I will say this. The reason there was more randomness, by the way, before the playoff, and the reason there was more randomness was if you only 2 teams play for the national championship, well, even the best of the best team is bound to is in danger of slipping up throughout the year at some point. So you could get a little more randomness because all the great teams have a game where they just lay an egg. So maybe the 2 best teams playing for the title aren't necessarily the 2 best teams. And so you can kind of get a little bit of randomness like that. If you get a 12-team playoff, you get enough randomness, kind of like March Madness, where, okay, now you got to win at least 3 games, maybe 4, and you might slip up having to do that. When it's a 4-team playoff, it's effectively a double elimination. And what we've learned in football is a double elimination tournament basically always crowns the best team because the best team may slip up once. They're not going to slip up twice in a double elimination. They might slip up twice if the playoff is 12 teams, which it's going to be in a year. So I think a 4-team playoff creates the same problem that a best-of-7 series does in the NBA, which is the problem with the NBA in a best-of-7 series. The better team always wins. Baseball and hockey, not so much. Best-of-7 series, those are such luck sports that in a best-of-7 series, you still might actually, get underdogs winning. But in a double elimination for football or in a best-of-7 for basketball, the better team always 100% of the time wins.
Click that thumbs up button because I have a discussion and I want to bring more people in. So if you click the thumbs up button, it alerts more people that we're here. And we greatly appreciate that. If you haven't subscribed yet, we need you to do that. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So the Cowboys beat Tom Brady. They had never beaten Tom Brady before last night. How does that tie into Tennessee, Dave? How are you spinning this one? Well, here's the way I'm spinning it, and we'll ask it as today's tough question. We'll post it on the Twitter page. What foe did you most enjoy vanquishing? So if you look back over the history, just the recent history, and Caleb's going to dive a little bit deeper, you have Nick Saban this year. Tennessee was able to beat him while still maybe not at his best, but pretty darn close after I see a number one recruiting class. He didn't have some guys pan out at receiver in particular, but that was a very good football team. So there's no shame in beating a two-loss Alabama team because you're one of the losses as Tennessee was able to beat Alabama in the final seconds in Neyland Stadium. So you have Nick Saban. Then you have Steve Spurrier in 2001. You beat Steve Spurrier to go to the SEC championship game. I believe in Steve Spurrier's mind that was going to be his last hurrah. He was going to go win an SEC title and maybe more, maybe play Miami in the Rose Bowl. Tennessee wasn't able to do that. They lost to LSU. But the last time that Steve Spurrier took the field in 2001 in Florida, he was a loser. And he walked off and ended up retiring after that season. So the other one that I would come up with, and this is getting before my time, which is why I love to lean on Caleb because he is a historian right up there with the best of them, but would be Paul Bear Bryant. Also in his final game, Caleb, that was a significant win. So Tennessee, by happenstance or good timing or good old grit and refusing to give up, has beaten three teams, three of the best coaches, I would say the three best coaches in the past 50 years of the sport, two of them out of the sport. So out of those three, which one do you think Tennessee fans enjoyed the most, Caleb Calhoun?
So here's my question to you, and you could, I'm because of those three, should we throw 98 Spurrier in there? Was 01 more euphoric than 98 for Florida, for the win, specifically the win over Florida?
Well, I mean, it's coin flip. I mean, I was in Gainesville, so I wasn't at that just absolutely idiotic display at Tom Black Track where they gave out roses and still had an SEC championship game to play. So I wasn't there. I was there right after the 98 championship game when they did charge the field. That was euphoric. I'm going to, you can say that. Well, let's just kind of combine them, I guess. You beat him 2 years out of 4, both for the most important games out of that group. So, man, I'm going to say that's a coin flip, Caleb, and part ignorance for not being at that idiotic Rose Bowl ceremony in Tom Black Track. But no, you bring up a good point. Was 98 the vanquishing of the foe, or was 2000? I guess we could clump them together if that works with you.
And one last question. When we talk vanquishing of the foe, we're talking coaches, not programs, right? Because there's still the 95 Alabama game, which was a vanquish in its own right at the time, but no one considered vanquishing Gene Stallings to be a big deal. And then I brought up 1914 Vanderbilt, the early one. For those of you who don't know, go back and look at history. Tennessee never beat Vanderbilt until 1914. Vanderbilt was the class of the South in college football during that time. Hilarious to say, but they were. And Tennessee could never beat them. They finally won it in 1914, went 9-0, won their first SIAA title that year. Robert Naylor was hired to beat Vanderbilt. That was the task he was given. But if we're just talking coaches between those three, I wasn't around in 1982, but I would say that's tough. I would say the Alabama one this year, and I'm not trying to be prisoner of the moment, that was the longest losing streak Tennessee ever had to a school in a series, 15 games. By the way, 16 to Nick Saban, because let's not forget their losing streak to Nick Saban dates back to the worst loss in Tennessee football history, the 01 SEC championship game. And they finally vanquished that this year. And they stormed the field, which, by the way, it's a lot harder to storm the field nowadays than it was when they beat Florida in 98 because there's so many rules and regulations about storming the field that are put in place.
True.
And
now, Elias said there were roses everywhere on Florida's campus during the pregame. I think that kind of triggered our own idiocy. Now, I was sent there. This is the only time we did this. They sent me to cover Florida's football practice, which was a really bad idea because none of them knew me and they thought I was some sort of spy. But I was down there on Monday. I don't remember seeing roses before the game. Do you recall that?
There were some highlights of Florida fans holding roses. There were.
Okay.
There were.
Well, I was there and I didn't see it, but I don't doubt it.
Which, to be fair, I think you knew how Florida was. Yeah, they shouldn't have overlooked Tennessee, which was stupid. But I would say that had Florida won that game, Florida would not have struggled with LSU the way Tennessee did. That matchup, Florida would have beat the brakes off them, honestly.
It wasn't a very good LSU team.
No, it wasn't.
And, they had two of their key players, Rohan Davey and LeBrandon Tofield, announced out at halftime. And
everybody criticized, everybody used to, I get the criticism of Fulmer, but you know this, Dave. One of the dumbest criticisms of Fulmer was that he ran the ball too much. No, that game he actually abandoned the run game way too quickly. I remember watching that, and Casey Clausen threw it like 44 times. Or some stupid number like that.
I agree, but that's one of those, and I typically don't do this. I'm putting a lot of it on the players. You had the Julian Battle dropped interception. You had the Dante Stallworth fumble. You had the Travis Stevens fumble. As bad as the defensive coaches responded to the draw after draw, and that's exactly how they responded. They just took it. And as bad as that was, if Tennessee just holds on to the ball, makes a timely interception, that's a 14, 17-point victory by Tennessee. I firmly believe that. Elias also saying if you can ever find the Grantland Rice article about the 1940 Tennessee Vandy game, it's a classic one. I will bet you that Caleb Calhoun knows all about that. And I will bet you that you will make a fantastic decision going with Guardian Investment Advisors. Guardian Investment Advisors, GIAPlantoday.com. They not only tell you where your money's going, but why. That's pretty refreshing. How awesome is that? GIAPlantoday.com. They're absolutely the best. Tell us more, Gary Thurman, especially with inflation being such a factor. Up after this, Jeremy Pruitt trying to get in the NFL. We'll go ahead and post that question on Twitter. What vanquished foe did you most enjoy? Was it Spurrier of the late 90s, early 2000s? Was it Nick Saban this past season? Or was it that guy, some Paul Bear Bryant maybe, in 92? Back in 2 minutes. 82. Back in 2 minutes. Go ahead and hit that thumbs up button so we can bring more people in, and we'll have that discussion. And why Jeremy Pruitt should not be allowed to return to college football, but it looks like that's going to be the case. 2 minutes off Look Sports.
Has risen to the highest level in over 40 years, according to the April 2022 U.S. inflation calculator. Will your investments provide you the income you need in retirement? Are you losing purchasing power of your savings due to inflation? Simply stated, if the cost of goods and services are 8% higher and you're only earning 4% in your investments, that money buys you less of what you need. Right now is the time to act. Call Guardian Investment Advisors today.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here. I want to personally invite you to North Knoxville's newest sports bar and restaurant. It's Big Orange Phillies, located in Black Oak Center. And yes folks, it's happening in Halls. Big Orange Phillies offers family-friendly environment with homemade meals and the best deli-style subs around. Billiards, darts, jukebox, shuffleboard, and cornhole, and a full bar. We also offer valet parking on weekends and during special events. We even have a covered back patio. It's happening at Big Orange Phillies. We want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air. Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm. and finals for Best Law Firm and Best Personal Injury Firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassey Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassey, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassey's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassey Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Got cataracts? We can fix that. Never miss another moment. With a little help from Doctors Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn at cctis.com.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm Lane with and taste.
One thing about sports is we forgive, and probably the society in general in the United States of America probably forgives. Sometimes I would argue a little bit too quick. So take part in our today's tough question. What foe did you most enjoy vanquishing? Was it Nick Saban in 2022? Was it Steve Spurrier in the 98 to 2001 era? Or back in 82, was it Paul Bear Bryant? Hit the like button, and let's get into this Jeremy Pruitt thing. So it is brought to you by Kraft Treats, this segment. Kraft Treats is fantastic when it comes to chill pills for your dog because Kraft Treats can help with your dog's digestive system. It can also help with anxiety, and it can help with arthritis. It's fantastic. Those are the chill pills, okay? So they've got other products as well. And you can get 20% off by just using Off the Hook as a promo code. That's Off the Hook. So let me see those thumbs up buttons hit, and let's get more people on board. And Caleb, so Jeremy Pruitt, rumored to be returning to college football. Now, other than just the really, really immoral things that can happen, that are just morally and legally wrong, such as Penn State or something like that. I mean, as far as real college athletics, Jeremy Pruitt ranks right up there. He didn't have as much financial support as, let's say, Southern California to give Reggie Bush a house, but if he could have, he would have. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Money flowing left and right. He actually, at one point, is just so absolutely off the wall that he reached out to us at one point to defend Jeremy Banks. Whether or not it's a good hire, we could debate that. I think he's a little crazy, but I also think that Nick Saban does a good job of rehabilitating these guys, and he was a good defensive coordinator for a long time. So the word is that he could go to Alabama and be their defensive coordinator. They need an upgrade at both coordinator positions from last year, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on the NCAA allowing Jeremy Pruitt to come back into the fold of college football?
Well, this is where it's up in the air, and this is why I'm not so sure Nick Saban is going to hire him, because we forget this. The NCAA has still not finished their investigation into Tennessee.
That's right.
They haven't come out with the punishment yet. We don't know. They might give Jeremy Pruitt a show cause. And imagine if Nick Saban hires Jeremy Pruitt and then Jeremy Pruitt's given a show cause and Nick Saban has to go back to the drawing board to find another defensive coordinator. If he isn't, maybe that's why Nick Saban's waiting. Because Dave, you may know, I know Tennessee pushed back the investigation, the final results of it for a month. And so they might figure out where they stand at the end of this month. So maybe that's what Nick Saban is waiting for.
I was told they pushed it back just in case they made the college football playoff, and just in case there was a postseason ban. So that would be horrendously embarrassing. So here are my thoughts on Saban. He is so tied in and embedded with the SEC that he's not going to make a hire of Jeremy Pruitt unless he knows there's no show cause or that it is easily defeatable. So the way a show cause works, for those that don't know, is a show cause is you have to essentially show cause why he is a good hire, a positive hire after previous issues. So just because you have a show cause doesn't mean you can't get hired. You then, though, it drags out the hiring process. And you're right, you could hire him today. The NCAA could come out with a show cause, and then you have to make a case for him. So then suddenly you could be into March or April still looking for your defensive coordinator, and they don't want that to happen. And I will say this: I think there is not necessarily Alabama bias, but elite bias, that once you get to that level, you're going to get a little phone call from somebody at the SEC office and say, I think you're good to go, Nick. Or you stand a better chance, in my opinion, of winning by show cause if you have to go through that process on the back end. But again, it's not a perfect scenario to have Jeremy Pruitt just kind of flopping around in the wind for the next 2 months. I've got a lot of respect for what Nick Saban was able to figure out with all these analysts. I mean, they have like 25 analysts, and listen, Tennessee's starting to do the same thing. And the only difference between an analyst and a coach, Caleb, is they're not allowed on the field. Well, I can tell you, as soon as the media is asked to leave, that they all run out on the field at every school. Okay, I mean, that's a fact. I've been at a practice where coaches, analysts, whatever you want to call them, were running onto the field, and they're like, "You didn't see me." I was like, "Okay, fine, I didn't see." But so I've got a lot of respect for what Nick Saban has done. Not that he just resurrected coaches, but he got the best out of Butch Jones. I think Butch had some insight into the offense that they ran for a number of years. I think Lane Kiffin speaks for himself. I think all these guys have done well, and he's gotten the best out of them. So not from a rehabilitation standpoint, but the way he's built that. But Jeremy Pruitt, man, seems like a hell of a reach to me. I mean, if half what I've heard is true, there's no way in creation I would make that hire, even if I could get away with it.
So I'm not going to disqualify myself, but I will just qualify what I say with, I don't know the half of what you heard, because I know you've heard a lot more than I have about what was going on with Jeremy Pruitt about Tennessee. If based on the surface of what I know, if that's all the information that I have, and that's all that was there, honestly, I don't mind Nick Saban hiring him back. And I'm going to say why. One, this is about paying players, and what he did was stupid, cash in McDonald's bags and things like that. It was so reckless. But at the same time, I mean, we got to be honest, there's NIL is effectively a recruiting method now anyway. It's effectively legalized. And I know you're not supposed to use it for recruiting, but we know it's done. I don't think Jeremy Pruitt should be absolved from punishment. I don't think but he's been out of college football for 2 years now. Tennessee was able to fire him for cause, so they don't have to pay his buyout, and they shouldn't have to. I think because of that, I think it's fair to let Jeremy Pruitt back in if he wants to coach defense at Alabama. I'm going to actually here's the thing. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but I will say this. This is proof that he's a coordinator, not a head coach, to be fair. Players seem to love Jeremy Pruitt. His players love him.
They do.
And I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, and I want to be real clear that this is just a football only issue that I have with Jeremy Pruitt and why I wouldn't hire him. And you're right. The NIL, maybe all that he was doing at Tennessee becomes legal. That's very true. But this is not a personal issue that I have with Jeremy Pruitt. By personal, I think Butch Jones abused some of his players. I think that he was a sociopath. I think that's a whole different level. So, I mean, if somebody would have called me from Arkansas State, I would have told them the truth. Not that they would have cared, but that's a whole different level. So this is just, to me, on taking those guys out of the equation, the people that are abusive to their players and just abusive to media and abusive across the board. I'm taking that out of play. But just in terms of football stuff only, I mean, I think Jeremy Pruitt's right up there with a 9 on the football scale, going back to the old SMU days. I think if if he would have had a Corvette to give to Eric Dickerson, he would have given Eric Dickerson a Corvette. So that is what concerns me. And but I guess that I'm being cautious. However, do we really think the NCAA is going to crack down on Alabama in Nick Saban's final years in Tuscaloosa? There's no way they're going to let that go out like that. Like, you get 40, scholarship reductions and all that. He's not going to go out like Pete Carroll did at Southern California. He's not.
Who we all know bolted. Pete Carroll bolted into the same way Urban Meyer did. Urban Meyer with Florida ran. He knew the program was heading for disaster, I think, and he was ready to leave that mess on someone else's doorstep. And
I also think he knew that Nick Saban was going to dominate the league. I do believe that. I covered that SEC championship game, both of them, so helped me with the years. But it was Florida won the first one, and then Alabama won the second, and he didn't like any part of that game, nor the post game, nor anything like that. And you could just tell that he had. I was talking to some other coaches around the league. It was like that he had just. I don't want this to sound flippant, because he did possibly have a heart issue, which I question. Esophageal spasms is essentially a panic attack, but I talked to coaches around the league, and he looked across the sideline and he said, that dude's better. And I think that was the end. And you're right. Florida too had a eventual convicted murderer on their team. There were all kinds of issues there. So no, I mean, but with Jeremy Pruitt, to hire him back, I guess if you're Nick Saban, you're able to work your way around it, but I'd have trouble sleeping at night knowing he was on my staff because of the vast, vast multitude of NCAA infractions that he just committed freely. So
I think he cracked under pressure at Tennessee. I think running a whole program as opposed to focusing on just one side of the ball had him crack under pressure, and he wouldn't do that at Alabama. And I say that because this. Jeremy Pruitt had never been even an associate head coach at even the high school level before he took over at Tennessee. All he ever was a coordinator. And I think just running I don't think he would go behind Nick Saban's back to do coaching under Nick Saban. Largely because, one, you don't have to cheat if you're at Alabama at this point. And so I think that's a big deal. I want to actually pause and give Jeremy Pruitt a bit of credit on this. We love the job Josh Heupel's done. Jeremy Pruitt scouted so many of these players that nobody wanted. He found Cedric Tillman. And I think, honestly, this is a hot take, but Jeremy Pruitt had an eye for some talent, honestly, that a lot of coaches don't have.
No, I remember thinking that he was a little bit ahead of the curve, because now everybody uses edge, which drives me crazy. It's not that hard to go DE/linebacker, but everybody uses edge as a new position in football. Well, it wasn't new. Lawrence Taylor was doing it. Sometimes he'd put his hand down on the ground. Sometimes he wouldn't. But I did think that the one time I spoke to Jeremy Pruitt kind of off to the side, that he was a little bit ahead of his curve, because he didn't care if you put your hand down or put your hand up. And it was really all about the body lean that you're able to get into players. So, yeah, I mean, I think if you want to talk about personnel development, evaluating talent, I think the X's and O's probably is still Saban's, don't you?
Yeah.
The game plan. But if you want to talk about developing players, I think he's fantastic at that. So that's why, to me, he should just go to the NFL, and that should be the end of it. And if I were a head coach or an athletic director, I wouldn't risk the potential embarrassment of hiring him. And listen, the embarrassment's on the front end. He doesn't have to screw up anymore. Just by saying you're hiring him, aren't you kind of throwing up the white flag a little bit of, I've run through every other coach because I'm hard on coaches. My name is Nick Saban, and you're next.
I mean, I don't think you have to if you're Nick Saban. Nick Saban can honestly be like, look at my record and look at my background. I'm hiring him because he's the best coach and because I can and because I'm Nick Saban. And I'm like, if another school hired Jimmy Pruitt, I think we might be it might look a little desperate. I don't think Nick Saban's desperate. I think there's a lot of coaches that would want that job to be his defensive coordinator. So if Jeremy Pruitt gets the job, he got it because Nick Saban preferred him to everybody else, not because Nick Saban was desperate.
Okay.
This is not a Sal Sinceri hire.
No. I'm going to argue this, though, through people I talk to. I just wonder if Nick Saban has run through the elite coaches on his staff because he's had such great turnover. Can he just call anybody anymore? Okay, let's go back. Brent Venables at Clemson before he gets a head coaching job. Could he have called Brent Venables and said, I've got $5 million a year for you. It's a lateral move. I understand that, but we want you here at Alabama. I think 10 years ago, he could call and make that sort of hire. I don't know that he can just call up a staff and make that hire now because he's incredibly difficult to work with.
I don't think he can make the hire with Brent Venables because I think that in college football coaching circles, everybody knows that the coordinators are the brains behind Dabo Swinney's success. Whereas, so would you rather be a coordinator winning a national championship at Clemson or winning at Alabama? You'd rather do it at Clemson because Alabama, Nick Saban's really in coaching circles, Nick Saban's getting all the credit because he's the defensive guru. He's the mastermind. Whereas Dabo is more of a CEO and hands off. But do I think that a lot of other places he could pull that off? Yeah. I mean, I think he could still get a lot of high profile coaches in there. More so on the offensive side, I'll concede that because I think it's kind of well known that Nick Saban really lets offensive coordinators run the show. And you've seen more, Lane Kiffin, Brian Dabble, Jimbo Fisher to go back, Jim McElwain. Jim McElwain got a head coaching job, which is so. I mean, it's So I think it's more
with the San Jose Sharks.
Oh, oh my God! I will never forget the 2009 Tennessee-Alabama game that Tennessee almost won, the blocked field goal. If you remember, the only reason Tennessee was in that game was because Jim McElwain was so incompetent calling plays for Alabama on the other side of the ball. I mean, he was an embarrassment of a coach. I'm sorry, but
I think the Shark deserves a little bit of blame too because the Shark may have broken up his marriage. I don't know. They seem very close. Surely that wasn't him. That was the most surreal.
Oh my God!
Just how he had to defend himself. It was bizarre. And I still thought it looked a lot like him, naked man with a shark. Whatever. Okay, so this from Travis. A murderer, a thief, and a preacher walk into a bar. And I've got the punchline after this. First, I want to tell you about the Andy Mason Group. The Andy Mason Group is right there in Knoxville, and they can handle all of your real estate needs, save you tens of thousands of dollars. Go to andymasonrealestate.com. He lives in the Powell Halls area, but can handle all of Knoxville. Over 40 years of experience. They are real estate aficionados. Best service, best price. How about that? So Travis says a murderer, a thief, and a preacher walk into the bar. The bartender says, hey, it's the 2008 Florida Gators.
I love it.
It's pretty good. Kudos to Travis. Henry says, in my opinion, in 5 years, Alabama will return to its place it's been before Saban. They made the greatest run in college football history, but it's coming to an end within the next 5 years tops. I'd agree 5 years tops on that. And the chances of just going out and hiring somebody that wants to fill those shoes is incredibly difficult, Caleb.
Yeah, I don't think they'll. I think they'll fall back to the pack. They're not going to return to where they were before Saban because remember, Dave, they're
bad. Yeah, they had one doofus coach after another.
Yeah, and part of this by the way, part of this was Alabama had 3 separate scandals that put them on probation 3 separate times. Scandals that aren't going to be scandals anymore. And even amidst those scandals, they had a top 10 finish in 2005, very close to winning the SEC that year. They won the SEC in 1999, and they won the national title in 1992. So even Alabama, during like a down period of like 20 years, still wins like 3 SEC titles and a national title because it's such a, again, Dave, where do you rank it? I mean, I know we say Ohio State, Georgia, and LSU are probably the 3 easiest jobs in America. Alabama's probably number 4, wouldn't you say? like where just any idiot can win 10 games.
Give me the 3 again.
Ohio State, Georgia, and LSU are the top 3. LSU number 1, Ohio State number 2, Georgia number 3. I think are the 3 easiest jobs. Maybe Georgia number 2.
I think LSU's number 1.
I agree.
I think Ohio State's pretty easy, given the fact that I've got some ties up there and worked up there for a short amount of time. I mean, it's pretty much everybody's Ohio State. So I think Georgia, you have the Atlanta area. You know, I just people would throw in Southern California because of the talent there, but you do have to compete with UCLA if they're in good shape, and you also don't have the passion for football, and I think you're going to see that more and more and more. And I mentioned earlier, I think safety is going to crop up as another issue with Damar Hamlin and the ongoing concussion issue that's not going away. I mean, I know, Caleb, I'm not going to mention names, but I know former players in the NFL that have passed away of CTE that are struggling with CTE just over the past 2 or 3 years, that are struggling to this day with CTE. That on a real life perspective, I can speak to, and I know that's not going away, which we talked about earlier in the show. So, yeah, I think you've got the right grouping. I would actually have Alabama down on par. So I think you've got the top 3. Well, you know, you could say Texas there as well if they get the right.
They got to compete with A&M and
have to compete with A&M. That's
Oklahoma.
So I think you've got the right 3. Then I think you take the next step down and you have Alabama, which their in-state talent base is way better than when Nick Saban took over. You do have to compete with Auburn. I think you have Texas, who has to compete with Texas A&M. I think you have Southern California, who I illustrated their challenges before. So I think you've got about 5 schools on that second tier, and Alabama's right in there. But I think you pegged the top 3.
Yeah,
I'm really struggling to challenge that. The only one I could throw out there if they got all in on football would be Miami. But right now, the stadium's 50 minutes from 55-0 from the campus. So that's an issue. You're not building a campus. The facilities are woefully behind.
And on top of that, I mean, the big thing with me with Miami is, and it's got a Southern California factor. Whereas I feel like Florida and Florida State could both pick off some of those recruits largely because the passion's not there. Look, if you're a 5-star athlete at Florida, you walk into a bar, every girl wants to be near you. Okay, you're a 5-star athlete at Miami, you walk into a bar, you got to compete with like 8 other celebrities that may be richer than you.
Yeah, and you're still paying $18 for a beer.
Yeah,
I would argue this in that little 3-county area, Miami-Dade, I would argue they're as passionate as anybody. Now, you get outside of that area, outside of the immediate Coral Gables area, that's true. I will tell you one quick story to illustrate that. I flew all the way to Miami to cover like 2 or 3 prospects, and I can't even remember their name at the time, but I remember going to a camp, and I've been to the Under Armour camps. I've been to the Under Armour All-American game. I've been to U.S. Army All-American Bowl. I've been to all that stuff. And I literally, Caleb, was about 8 feet away from 2 of the guys who were teammates that I needed to interview. There were 450 people at the camp, 300 of which were players. I'm not talking about a bunch of donkeys. You know, I'm talking about real players. It got so busy and so crowded, and there were so many athletes. I flew all the way down there, and they were 8 feet away. There were people in between us. I lost them amidst all the great athletes. And I had to go to their school the next day. I mean, it was bizarre. I thought you go to a camp like that and you're like, how Hurricanes can you mess this up? Well, it's because they go to other schools and they see how they're treated, and it's a lot better. You'll be treated fantastically well by Zach England of Best of Brock. If you need a personal injury attorney, the best in Chattanooga. Zach England, Best of Brock, is absolutely phenomenal. Zach will, hey, how about this? He'll go toe-to-toe with the insurance company's lawyers that are paid a pretty good fee, but you'll get in and out taken care of by Zach England, and it'll get you paid. Zach England of Best of Brock. Zach's got your back. Coming up in 2 minutes, what do we got up next there, Caleb?
We got a couple of things. I think we're going to look back on Tennessee's Orange Bowl win and where that ranks among the greatest bowl wins in Tennessee history.
And some hoops as well. So a busy final segment. Stay tuned. And I'll remind you that portions of the program were brought to you by Campbell, Cunningham, Taylor, and Hahn, local vision care that you just can't get anywhere else in the Knoxville area. Back in 2 minutes.
Sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center. Ah.
Do you want to own the more that owns every job? Then get to Vassy Lawn and Garden in Cleveland and get you a Toro. I'm David Vassy, here to talk to you about Toro. With a Toro Zero Turn, you'll get more out of every minute and you'll reach the finish line faster. At Vassy's, we like to say, no matter if you're mowing 3 acres a week or 11 lawns a day, homeowners and business owners alike find confidence in equipment they can trust from top to bottom.
Vassy Lawn and Garden, Highway 60 North in Cleveland.
Man alive, it's worth the drive.
Hey folks, Gary Viles here, Viles Automotive on Calhoun Drive. I've been selling cars here in East Tennessee for 27 years. In that time, I've come to realize it's not about the car. It's about you, the customer. So I'm here to take care of you just like family. Good credit, bad credit, you name it, we can get you taken care of. If we don't have it, we can find it for you. We go across the country to get any vehicle that you want. And here at Viles Automotive, we don't believe in fake numbers. We just give you great deals. And as always, we want, we need, and we appreciate your business.
Here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
Chattanooga, we're at it again. For the 5th year in a row, you voted us best of the best criminal and DUI law firm.
And finalist for best law firm and best personal injury firm.
Thank you for the love, Chattanooga. We won't let you down.
I want to remind you, we've got an event coming up. I'll tell you more about that. Your opportunity to meet some Tennessee football players. That the official craft beer of Off the Hook Sports is Zul Beer, xulbeer.com. If you're listening on our audio platform, xulbeer.com. Worldwide award-winning craft beer. They are phenomenal. Again, Zul Beer also with parking downtown. And, man, when it comes to a place to go hang out, that's so important. And nobody has parking in downtown Knoxville anymore. They certainly do. And I want to remind you that if you're car shopping whatsoever, Viles Automotive Group on Calhoun Drive is the epicenter of car buying in Knoxville. So get to Calhoun, get a great selection, Viles Automotive Group. And also, the other awesome part about it is they have a repair shop that will take care of you. So click on that like button. We greatly appreciate that. And I want to dig into some Tennessee basketball here in a second. But first, Caleb had a great question, I thought, in our pre-production meeting, which is 5:30 a.m. every morning. And maybe not that early. But you brought up, where does this bowl win rank among some of the great ones? So let's go ahead and take out, and we want your thoughts on the chat board. Hit the thumbs up button so we can get more people on board. Now, as far as best bowl wins, don't we have to take out the Fiesta Bowl if we're going to do this?
Well, so I got a post on Off the Hook Sports right now, ranking them, and I did put the Fiesta Bowl number 1.
Okay. So it's kind of everybody else. So as far as where this one ranks, I would have it behind the Sugar Bowl in '85, and part of that was the season. I'm looking to see where you have. So you had the Sugar Bowl number 2, so we're on the same page. Then you go way back in time. Well, let's count them down. So we know the top 2. We're going to do this all crazy stuff. 91, the Sugar Bowl. That was Virginia losing to Tennessee 23-22. Funny you have that game up there. That was, I think, my first college football watch party when I was like 17 years old. And we had a bunch of friends over, and Tennessee ended up winning, but it certainly didn't look that way throughout a lot of the game.
No, it did not. Andy Kelly, Tony Thompson. I mean, we talk about Tom Brady. Andy Kelly seemed like the Tom Brady of Tennessee because it seemed like he always was good for leading a comeback. And you never knew. I feel like you never thought you were out of a game when Andy Kelly was quarterback. And that probably had to do with the offensive weapons, honestly. I think that was the most loaded Tennessee ever was with offensive skill players that period.
And definitely a lot of luck in the miracle at South Bend. I mean, like 8 things had to happen for Tennessee to pull off that comeback win. But nevertheless, 1943 Sugar Bowl, Tennessee, Tulsa. You're going back in time. What was special about the 43 Sugar Bowl?
43 Sugar Bowl was the first Sugar Bowl Tennessee ever won. And I think that counts for something. They didn't win the SEC that year. They had one loss. John Barnhill was coaching Tennessee. It was the last game they played before canceling the 43 season because Tennessee, like most of the Southern schools, had most of their players going to fight the Nazis in World War II. And amidst that backdrop, Tennessee scores a pretty big Sugar Bowl win. Tulsa was number 4 at the time. I believe they were undefeated. Tulsa. I believe they had a strong case for the national championship, and Tennessee beats them 14-7.
1971 Sugar Bowl, Tennessee 34, Air Force 13.
Another legendary team that actually didn't win a championship because that loss to Auburn cost them the SEC title. Tennessee won that game to finish 11-1, finish in the top 5. It was the end of the 1970 season, Bill Battle's first year, loaded with talent on that team. Jackie Walker stands out to me the most, but a guy named Philip Fulmer was playing offensive line for that team in 1970.
Wow. 1990 Cotton Bowl. This one's interesting. I don't know if you know this backstory, but Chuck Webb, he was a freshman, correct?
Correct.
Okay. He ran for 250 yards in a 31-27 win over Arkansas. He was just shy of the Cotton Bowl record. But I was told that Johnny Majors didn't think a freshman should win that record. So they gave a couple of carries at the end to somebody else. I don't know if you'd heard that story before, but that was a really big win by the Vols.
Tennessee won 31-27. If you look at the way the 1989 season ended, Tennessee won their bowl game. I believe Alabama lost theirs. So Tennessee was the only one-loss SEC team after Tennessee, Alabama, and Auburn split the SEC title 3 ways. So Tennessee finished number 5. They had a strong case to maybe say they should have gotten a share of the national title that year. They didn't, but that was a big win. And quite honestly, I think that set in motion what we consider the greatest run of the modern era for Tennessee football, the 1989 to 1990 or to 2004. That 16-year run was just incredible.
Totally agree. 2022 Orange Bowl is where you have Tennessee beating Clemson 31-14. So that's last year. So number 6, that's pretty strong stuff. The 96 Citrus Bowl, Tennessee 20, Ohio State 14. Why did you have this at number 5?
So I want people to know this is the only, would we say, non-prestigious bowl game that I have on here. Like it wasn't a BCS Bowl or a New Year's Six Bowl or a Bowl Coalition Bowl. But Tennessee was in the top. It was a non-New Year's. It was a non-BC. It was a non-Bowl Coalition Bowl, I guess, or Bowl Alliance in '95 between 2 top 5 teams. Tennessee was facing the Heisman winner in Eddie George that year.
Yep.
They had a famous play where they stopped the Heisman Trophy winning running back on a 4th and goal from the 1-yard line. They had a couple big plays, one from Peyton Manning, one from Jay Graham. They win that game to finish 11-1 and in the top 3. I think it was just the significance of beating a top 5 Ohio State team, what that meant for the program as the greatest 4-year run of the modern era of Tennessee football was underway.
All right, so we're into the top 5 portions of the program brought to you by City Heating and Air Conditioning. That's cityheatandair.com. Integrity matters. They'll give you the best service for your unit, and it's going to get cold. And then when it gets warm, units tend to get stressed and they can go out. You need to know if it's just a service thing or if you need a whole new unit. City heating and air conditioning. The 1951 Cotton Bowl. I was not old enough to be at that game.
This was in the 1950 season. Tennessee lost the second game of that year to Mississippi State, won out to finish 10-1, finished the year ranked number 4. Texas finished the year ranked number 3. Tennessee had beaten Kentucky earlier in the year, who won the SEC title, who was undefeated with Bear Bryant at the time, but Kentucky still got the Sugar Bowl invite. But Kentucky did Tennessee a favor with that Sugar Bowl invite, which is they beat Oklahoma, who was, I believe, number 1. Army was number 2 and lost to Navy after the final AP poll came out. So some selectors by this point were already ranking their teams after the bowl games. So by Tennessee beating Texas in the Cotton Bowl, if rankings had been done after the bowl games, Tennessee very clearly would have finished number 1 in the nation. And many selectors had them number 1, so they actually are able to claim 1950 as one of their national championships.
The 1951 Cotton Bowl leads us to the 1939 Orange Bowl, Tennessee over Oklahoma, 17-0.
First bowl game Tennessee ever played in. First 11-win season Tennessee ever had in 1938 on the heels of their first SEC championship ever. Their first top 5 AP finish. They finished number 2 in 38 to a number 1 TCU, but also their first ever national championship. They were able to claim a share of the national championship that year. I think the majority of the selectors picked Tennessee over TCU, but the AP poll picked TCU. So this was a cherry on top of a legendary season. I would argue the second greatest season of all time, only to 1998.
Travis says the Capital One Bowl. What year was that against
2001?
Yeah. That was a very slow Michigan team. I thought that Tennessee looked great, but there was always in the back of my mind that I should have been in LA. So selfishly, I was pretty upset about that. I was watching the game last night, and God bless my wife. She tries hard to cook, but she doesn't cook like Big Orange Phillies. The wings are fantastic. The food is fantastic. Across the board is unbelievable. That's because they have fresh ingredients. If you're listening to lunchtime, go ahead and get there and hit it for lunch on Maynardville Pike. Close to Maynardville, close to North Knoxville. For all you peeps out that way, you will enjoy it because they've got darts, billiards, cornhole. If the game gets out of hand, a lot of NFL action still going on, as evident by, did I mention the Cowboys won last night? But a lot of NFL action still going on. So post up there and have a good time. And don't play Mr. Viles at billiards. That could go bad because he's really, really good. And portions of the program brought to you by Vassy Lawn and Garden. Man alive, it's worth the drive right there in beautiful Cleveland. Whether you're in Nashville, Knoxville, or Chattanooga, you need to get to Vassy Lawn and Garden for your industrial and commercial mower needs, residential as well. Toro, count on it. Caleb, what do you want to see out of the Vols tonight against Mississippi State? We'll be joined by Ron Slade tomorrow.
I think big thing, Tennessee is still number 2 across basketball bracketologies. Most of them still have Tennessee as a number 2 seed. I think big thing is they just need to return to their aggressiveness in rebounding on the offensive side of the ball. You could live with everything else that happened over the weekend. Mistakes happen with guard play. Poor shooting happens sometimes, but they should never, with their size, they should never get beat under the basket like that, even against a team like Kentucky that has pretty good talent, even though they're not playing like it all the time.
Yeah, you're going to have bad shooting nights from your guards, and they did not shoot well. But to get out rebounded, to get out hustled, and that's your game, there's no excuse for that. That should not happen as of January the 17th, moving forward to the rest of the season. That is their game, to out hustle, out defend, out rebound. Can live with the missed shots, even if it costs you an NCAA tournament game. People miss shots, especially when they have those big gargantuan coliseums like they used to with the Georgia Dome. But there's just no reason that Tennessee shouldn't play it the hard way. And if they don't, then I think there's signs for concern if that happens 2 games in a row, and especially off a disappointing loss to Kentucky. Have a blessed day, everyone. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. We will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. 10 a.m. weekdays, our new time. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Elias. Thank you, Travis, all those that participated. We'll talk to you tomorrow.